Okay, so I'm here with the next roster review, and this one is for Walta, or Monkey King, which they go by on Discord. They've provided a little bit of context, just very brief, but that's absolutely fine. I think their account speaks for itself. So they are now free to play, but have bought several Lightspeed bundles, which I've noticed from which they've said and is clear which ones from going through their roster. They have unlocked the Stranger and are currently building up their team as well as Balin's team, so I'll maybe have a quick look at that to see how they're getting on. And they're also working on getting the Peridia Pals up to R9. I think from a very quick look they might have already have done this and are then moving on to GL Leia, which makes sense. Their favorite game mode is GAC, but interestingly they are intentionally throwing matches to avoid getting promoted to Erodium. From doing their stats, I think they might have stopped this because they are now in Chromium 1, but I guess they could still potentially throw matches to move back into Chromium 2 by the end of this GAC. I guess I'm not too sure about that strategy in general. I'm sure maybe it has some advantages in terms of maybe getting more crystals from winning, but you get a higher net crystals from being in a higher league, so maybe it makes a little bit of sense. But ignoring that, just from briefly going through the roster, it does strike me as the sort of roster that might be ready to do well in Erodium, so this might be something to look for in terms of maybe strengthening their roster even more to move up in GAC League. So yeah, let's dive straight into it. So here is their account stats. So they have been playing for about a year and a third. At this point, just under. They are currently free to play, as they said, but have bought Lightspeed bundles, which makes sense. This would probably be very quick if they were just free to play, but do have that base of some Lightspeed bundles, which is good, and are maybe just chilling off for now in terms of purchasing them, which is probably actually a good idea, and which would be great in terms of letting them build up more Zetas, mods, that sort of thing. And maybe they just enjoy the free to play aspect more, which is completely understandable. Their guild, a reasonably big one, Heirs of the Empire, at 460 million. Their mod score and mod quality, I'd say, is pretty good for an account this size this quickly. This would be one of the main benefits in terms of not buying Lightspeed bundles anymore, is that they'll be able to bring this up quicker now that they're no longer expanding with Lightspeed bundles. So this is reasonable. Of course, there's always room for improvement, but they do have Jabba and they do seem to be pretty on top of their modding. In terms of guild performance, so 150 million, which is pretty good. I think we're getting up there maybe towards, I think, the fourth to last crate from memory, but that translates to quite a lot of Mark III each raid. Personal raid score 3.5 million, which is good, so that is pretty much bang on average in terms of what their guild's doing. So they're probably not under any pressure from their guild to increase raid score, but of course is something to look at, maybe not for this raid, but is another avenue of getting more resources and being more efficient, which this account seems to be very focused on, which is good to see. But that might be one of the areas to develop in the future. I probably wouldn't say for now. I would say for now this is pretty good in terms of their own performance. So currently in Chromium 1, I guess we'll see whether they decide to go up to Erodium at the end of this GAC. I may encourage that, having seen the roster a bit and some recent unlocks that they have. But for now in Chromium, fleet rank, they get to number 1 every day, and I think have Profundity and Executor that helps them do that. So that's pretty good for now. No pressing need for Leviathan, but yeah, they have said there's a mix of Profundity and Executor in the fleet arena, so maybe once there starts to be some Leviathans popping up, they might also want to do the same. And this all translates to quite good income, I would say overall. So 855 crystals on average a day, taking into account all of the sources. Obviously, a lot of this is driven by fleet, but also things like these assault battles reward some crystals, which I factored into it. Scoring quite highly in TB helps a bit, and of course, quite high GAC performance helps, but this could maybe be increased even more by moving up into Erodium. And the reason I wanted to highlight this is that looking over at this side of the page, they are very on top of their resource acquisition in terms of assault battles, getting Jabba. Yes, there's a few more GLs, but I'll go into why these might not be possible to go for in the near future when I look at the roster. But they've done the hard work in terms of getting that good passive income. And one area to potentially use things like crystals now is, of course, Colosseum, and getting potentially a 4-star unlock of the legendary character at the end of the era. Of course, maybe a little bit late now for doing that with Maul, but given the amount of crystals they will get on average each day, they might be at a point where they could start to spare some for getting characters up to 4 stars, even free to play. So I did a little bit of maths on this, and I believe you are required to get 15 shards after all of the free shards you get in order to get a character up to 4 stars. So that is worst case scenario 3 marquee packs, each of which are 1,300, so 3,900 per each character. You only need 5 of the characters so far in order to get the 4-star legendary unlock. So that's about 20,000 crystals they would need. But on average each day, that works out to, I think, 216 or 17, which I worked out. So they would have to essentially move back to just over 600 available crystals each day, which would still be enough to get them 3 refreshes for Cantina and Mod Energy, which at this point I would say are the most important, and would still have enough left over for some fleet and some normal. Normal, you need to do less refreshes technically because of things like the web store energy. So they are at the point where they could think about going for something like this. And this is a very new development, but might be an interesting play for an account that's getting quite a decent amount of crystals each day. Something to think about. Mark 2 and Mark 3 are very good because their guild is getting quite high reward boxes, and also they are very good in terms of tickets, and they're doing raids mostly every 6 days, sometimes every 7 days. So I've put the frequency at 6 days, and what that does is that really increases the amount of Mark 2 that they get, because the only real way to increase that is by increasing the number of times you do the raid and by everyone getting max tickets. So it does seem that they're in a very good guild that's very active and participating in the raid, so that all seems great. And as I mentioned, in terms of assault battles, everything is CT3 apart from Fanatical Devotion. Of course, we are getting Inquisitorius Lightspeed tokens at the moment, and I'll have to check how they are in terms of unlocking Riva, whether the guild has already done that. That might be something to have a look at, but that's functionally done, I would say. And then Jewel of the Fates and Peridia Patrol, this is R9, and I think this might be R9 by the time I'm recording this, because this was submitted a couple of weeks ago. So Assault Battles, all great. Jabba's really good. Hondo, maybe a bit of an ask to go for free to play. Ahsoka might be in the near future, but there's of course a conquest unit required, so that might be the issue with unlocking Ahsoka, as I'll go into. But yeah, that's it in terms of the stats. Let's jump into the account proper. Right, so here we are in Walta's account, Heirs of the Empire, and let's hop on over to their collection. So they have 2 GLs at the moment. They have Jabba. I don't think through a Lightspeed bundle from having a look through it. I think they just went and farmed Jabba, which is a great choice as a first GL, especially they would have done this before the Lightspeed tokens came out, so definitely makes sense. SWGOH, I think this probably was a bundle, but a very good sort of solid starting point in terms of GL and will help in terms of Assault Battle. For other things, they have Adrad, and of course they have the Profundity. Looks like they did pick up the Profundity Lightspeed bundle a few months ago. Things like the R7 Hera and I think R7 like Bistan would indicate that, but that's, yeah, great purchase in terms of a Lightspeed bundle and gives them a really good fleet. Let's have a quick look at fleet actually. I know they have Profundity, but do they have Executor? They do, so they have both of those fleets up and running. That will help a lot for GAC and give a bit of flexibility for Fleet Arena, which is fantastic. Other things, so they mentioned they're working on the Strangers team, and of course this is a conquest unlock, which means they're at the point of being able to do hard mode conquest and get the characters unlocked the first time around. Let's have a quick look to see what conquest characters they do. So yeah, just the Stranger and Maz at the moment, so these are the 2 latest conquest characters, which shows me that they've started conquest at least 6 months ago, started hard mode conquest, so hit 4 million at least 6 months ago, maybe a little bit longer because they might have joined during SM33's conquest, but maybe not at the point where they could unlock him. And the reason I'm discussing this is I'm trying to have a bit of an idea in my mind in terms of how far away they would be from other conquest characters that they would get from Proving Grounds. I would suspect still quite a long way off. It takes about a year and a half to get characters through Proving Grounds if you don't refresh. There's sometimes other ways of getting shards, like through additive drops, but if they were just to get the conquest characters through Proving Grounds, it would take about a year and a half, and it looks like maybe they've only started hard mode like 6 months ago. Maybe we'll call it 8 months ago. So let's say they're like 8 months or 7 to 8 months away from unlocking Proving Grounds characters. They might be a little bit closer than that, but let's put that in the ballpark. Let's say 6 to 8 months, that sort of region. They might be closer, they might be further away, but it'll still be a fair bit before they start unlocking them. For other things and characters, so they do seem to have quite, well, I was going to say quite a GAC focus. That's not entirely true. They do have a lot of TW Omicrons, which I'm noticing here, potentially for their guild. Let's check their guild's TW record. So pretty strong, so their guild could have a bit of a focus on TW, it looks like, similar to my main guild. So I am a fan of that investment in those Omicron. So yeah, maybe not entirely GAC, but they do have things like the Stranger and Starkiller, which will now form a pretty formidable team, can take out some crazy things like Ahsoka with Ezra, which I've done, and I think Rey, I haven't tried it myself, but quite a lot, and is very good on defense as well. So this is one of the main reasons I think they will be absolutely fine moving up to Erodium. They have a really top tier team, and maybe in the near future they'll start unlocking other conquest characters like Bane and stuff like that. So pretty solid. Have a lot of other nice tools like Great Mothers, Jabba of course, but are maybe at the point, oh, and they mentioned they're working on Balin. Do they have, let's look for unaligned force users, so let's check here. Do they have him unlocked? Yes, they have him, I think probably just unlocked, so we'll just be working on him. They have all of his requirements at 7 stars, maybe want some Zetas on them. So yeah, as they mentioned, I think they're just in the process of finishing off that team. And I think maybe mercenary might be a better tag. Yeah, so they have Hondo 6, which is interesting, and I'm sure they could throw in like Dash or something for now. Probably don't need to get someone like Kira up and running, although that is their profile picture, so maybe they want to do that. Oh yeah, I'm just thinking Hondo would have been through, I think they got the Afra Lightspeed bundle, would be my guess, because they have Afra up and running, and that would be another nice solid GAC team, especially at lower levels, and especially if they decide to go for IG90 maybe after he becomes farmable. That could be a good option. In terms of other bits and pieces, does anything stand out to me? They have Jedi Knight Luke from Jabba, got 7 Hera, which at first I was like, why is this Hera R7? But it makes sense because of the bundle. Maz. So do they have a nice little Maz team? That would be another nice weapon to have. Yeah. They don't have the ideal team, but they could for sure pull something together. I'm sure this will do something, especially in Chromium and Erodium JC. I guess eventually, they're not really close to Hondo, but eventually someone like Kix and Athano could help. But I'm sure this does some work, especially against like Sith, if like people set like Treya or something, which I'm sure is quite common in that level of GAC. I think Maz could be a nice option, even with the non-optimal team, I would say. And just having a wee check over, is there anything else really standing out? So Gear 12 Treya, that might be a nice little GAC side farm. Doesn't really lead anywhere, but if you are wanting to bolster up those teams, that could be an option. Yeah, so that's it in terms of their roster. What I'm going to do now is I've pulled up a bunch of GLs and requirement and legendary characters, so I'm just going to go through those. First of all, they mentioned they are moving on to Leia, which they already have a lot of great progress in, and will be getting Lightspeed bundle for 3PO and Chewie. They could use the Empire token and Scout, so then it's really just these 3 bad characters that they would have to get up. So they are very close to Leia, I would say, within the next month or two. Definitely by the end of February is when the Lightspeed token comes out, so that would be a good thing to pencil in terms of their farms, because they already have Jabba, Profundity, will have Leia. They will be, of course, very close to Jedi Master Luke. At that point, it would just be not even a couple of levels, I think 2 relics on Obi-Wan, and then farming up Jedi Rey, who you will need some kind of annoying, I was going to say annoying first order characters, but you have SOKR, so getting BB-8 won't be the issue. It would just be like veteran smuggler Chewie who you would need, so it's probably not that much work to get Jedi Training Rey, and that would be the only relic that you need for Jedi Master Luke. So he's not the best GL. Some say he's maybe the worst. I would say he's not the worst, second worst, I would say, before C, but especially in like Erodium JC and even in Kyber, he's not so bad to the point where you can't use him. He's still pretty much every match, even in Kyber 1, he'll have a use. He just tends not to be able to counter GLs a lot of the time, but is quite good at taking out other things, I would say. And another reason is that Jedi Knight Cal Kestis would be another good option to go for. You already have 3 of the requirements, and now with Carbonite Lightspeed tokens, going for these other 2 would be quite straightforward. You just would have to farm them up. I can maybe check how your guild's doing in the Zepho mission, but that would be a good option for the guild, but also for getting Jedi Master Luke, who you are very close to. Bo-Katan, this of course would be most efficient waiting for the Lightspeed token coming out in April, although you could potentially, if you wanted to pick up Bo-Katan before then, you could of course just farm these up, maybe using an Erodium Lightspeed token from Colosseum or just normally, because you could maybe use that Mandalorian Lightspeed token on someone like Padawan Sabine, because I would say Ahsoka isn't that much further in the future. So if you wanted Bo-Katan earlier than April, you could do that, I would say, and it wouldn't be that inefficient. The only thing is that Paz has 2 Zetas, so that's the really good thing about using that token on him. And that leads me to Ahsoka, who you're actually very close to in the grand scheme of things. A lot of the relics are already done for various things through, like, I think like Gaslight Speed Bundle. I'm not sure where Plo Koon would have come from, but I think that as well, actually, Gaslight Speed Bundle. And of course you already have the Peridia Pals up at R9. You already have Gas unlocked. It would just be a case of relicking him, and then just a few other things that are quite good to use, like Lightspeed tokens on, that sort of thing. As I mentioned, Mandalorian Lightspeed token could be used on Padawan Sabine. So yeah, that could be a pretty nice option. And I guess similar, if we go back to Leia, if for some reason you wanted to get Leia even sooner, might not even be necessary. You could just farm 3PO and Chewie up normally, and then maybe use the Lightspeed token on Huyang. But that Lightspeed token's so close, I would just wait for that to come around. So yeah, Ahsoka is quite close. The only big blocker would be Commander Ahsoka Tano, who is a conquest character. So I'm not too sure how far away from her you are. My estimate is there's 6 to 8 months, judging by your progress and other conquest characters, but it could be a bit further than that. So I would definitely try and work on her so that you can unlock her when you unlock Commander Ahsoka Tano, because she has a really good resource event as well. So yeah, that would be good. Hondo, I just wanted to check because I noticed, I think Quigold on your roster, not really that close, probably not that worth it to go for Hondo at the moment. Maybe wait until these guys become accelerated. Leviathan, similar issue with conquest units, you would have to wait for those to get unlocked, but similar to Ahsoka, I would try line it up so that you are ready to unlock Leviathan close to when you unlock this ship through conquest, and Malgus as well, just because it would be a very good use in terms of fleet but also GAC. So I think a lot of your farming actually will be sort of prepping for the future for when all of these conquest characters start to drop. If it is in that 6 to 8 month window, it might be a case of working on some easy things now, but really starting to prepare and look ahead for when all of these conquest characters start to drop, and you could start to unlock things like Leviathan, Ahsoka, but also work on their teams like Malicos or something like that. Just sort of getting ready, hoarding Zetas, hoarding Omicrons, all that good business. Jedi Master Kenobi, just wanted to check. Not too far because of the gas Lightspeed bundle. The issue here would be Watt, and I would say he's not really that worth it, and you won't have Commander Ahsoka Tano soon anyway, so I would definitely ignore JMK for now. And Lord Vader, again, just wanted to check, not really that close either. So I think a few of these you're quite close to, and then conquest units will be the big deciding factor in terms of what you go for first. So let's hop back to here. All right, so I wanted to check a couple of things before we head over to the short plan. So one thing I wanted to check was era units. So you are completely free to play and not spending on the era units, which is fine, but I did notice that you have Afra and Darth Vader Duo's End. You have like Mara Jade and Emperor Palpatine, of course, and now that Starkiller is going to move to the Stranger, who you've unlocked. Darth Vader and IG-90 would definitely be very good focuses when they start to become farmable, because they'll already be at gear 12 and will fit into teams that you already have. Yes, they'll take a while to farm, but they might even be worth refreshing the nodes, even though they'll be single shard farmable. The other ones maybe less so. Like Stormtrooper Luke could be good in 3v3, but you'll have Leia, so he won't be that beneficial in 5v5. Similar with these, bit more, it doesn't seem that you quite have the teams for these, so these two might be quite nice focuses while you wait on things like the conquest units to come about. I also wanted to quickly check raid. Where are we? So good solid foundation. Is there anything more that could be done? I guess I wonder if you're working on Scorch for the R9 Scorch is the most efficient way to get more points, if that's something you're interested in. Obviously looks like you're doing fine for where your guild is, so it would be completely up to you, or maybe you want to move guilds. But you, like, the Tarkin Scorch might be a possibility, just because it looks like you're maybe heading that way anyway. But I would say that would be a good option, but maybe not 100% necessary. But it does look like you've maybe started along that path. Other things, so so Inquisitors, let's have a look at those. Inquisitorius, do you have Riva unlocked? Not yet, so you of course have the 2 through the Lightspeed tokens. The rest will be coming soon, then you'll be able to unlock Grand Inquisitor. I imagine this is actually going to be a priority, but if we hop over to your guilds, let's have a look at Third Sister. Okay, so not that many, which I would guess you're not too close to, but maybe once everyone starts unlocking Grand Inquisitor through the Lightspeed tokens, you might not be too far away. So that might be something to bear in mind for the future. Obviously, I don't know when you'll unlock Riva, but could be a good option. And now that you also have Marek, he could help in that special mission as well, so that could be good. Another thing I wanted to check was Jedi. Here he is. Okay, so you have 31 Jedi Knight cows. You would need 30 R7 to do the Zepho mission, so not quite there yet for the guild, but looks like the guild's getting close, so that could be a nice option in terms of getting that GE2, and also would fit into Jedi Master Luke, who you are kind of close to unlocking anyway. And that does remind me, actually, I wanted to check Old Republic. How are we doing here? Okay, so not that progressed. I do wonder if Jedi Knight Revan could be a nice little background farm, not a big focus, because you will be unlocking, I assume, what's her name, Satil Shan will be the next conquest unit, and you look like you're able to do hard mode conquest, so it could be an option, maybe getting her team together. At the very least though, just even having Jedi Knight Revan would be good for a Jedi Master Luke team, so that could be a nice little background farm to do, and then you can maybe make that decision on whether you want to relic some of the other ones up for that Satil Shan team. I guess you can wait and see how it performs once people start unlocking her, but that could be another decent option. Right, so I think that's it in terms of what I wanted to look at. I'm now going to quickly head away and put together a short plan, so I'll go do that now. Alright, so I put plan together just quickly. This of course is just a suggestion. The way your roster is set up, I would say you have a lot of flexibility in terms of what you want to go for, just because you've done a lot of the good return on investment farms already, so are at the point where you maybe have a bit more freedom to go for certain teams or characters over others. And of course the big caveat over all of this is that I don't know when exactly you'll be able to unlock those conquest characters, and that will really determine things. So I've left this maybe a little bit light, just with an eye to prepping a bit for when those conquest characters drop. I say I left it light, there's still quite a lot on here, but I'm sure given your current a current setup, you'll be able to do this pretty easily. But yeah, so the thing that is sort of fixed in here for me is Leia. So at the end of February, we will get the Commander Luke Skywalker and 3PO and Chewie lightspeed tokens. I think it's just 3PO and Chewie you need actually. So you can maybe line up unlocking Leia with sort of end of February, start of March. I think there would be a nice solid target maybe into March, because you'll have to farm several characters to relics, but they're pretty easy farms. But before that, you'll just be able to finish off Balin, which you've mentioned, and of course the Inquisitorius. That could be a good option. Of course, try and improve in the assault battle. That will be difficult without Reva, but it might be that you want to start contributing to the special mission to unlock Reva in your guild, in which case you will need Grand Inquisitor anyway, and you have Marok, which should make things quite a bit easier to do that. So good farm to do and get prepared for when you do unlock Reva. And then moving on to after Leia, you'll be so close to Jedi Master Luke, just Jedi Training Rey really that you'll need, so that will be quite a straightforward thing to do afterwards. I think in the background while you're working on these, it would make sense to farm up the final two requirements for Jedi Knight Cal, which I think are Seer and Tarfos. Of course, maybe use a Carbonite Lightspeed token on those to get them at Gear 12, but you'll still have to farm up their shards, so maybe aiming for around the same time as Jedi Master Luke could be a good idea. And then also in the background, if you do have spare energy, I would say this would maybe be more optional, but Jedi Knight Revan could be a good thing just to do in the background with spare energy, that sort of thing, because at the very least he fits nicely onto a Jedi Master Luke team. But also you may want to use him with Satele Shan, who you will be unlocking through Conquest, so could be a good option. I would say not 100% necessary, but could be a fun thing to go for. And then around the same time you'll be able to get Bo-Katan Mandalore through the Mandalorian Lightspeed tokens, so that would be another good option. A lot of this doesn't require that much work because you're so close to all of them, not that many additional relics, so should be possible still to hoard gear and stuff for other things. I think for the first time I've actually recommended 2 era units, which I don't think I've done before, but they should, I forget exactly when they become farmable. I think it's like a month or 2 after the era for Darth Vader, maybe a little bit longer, so this all depends on when he becomes farmable. Of course, you will have him at 3 stars Gear 12, same for IG-90, but because you already have the teams, and most importantly because you now have the Stranger, so Starkiller will go with the Stranger, you now have an opening for the Empire team, so these would be 2 very good lifters just to make use of what you already have, and I think would be good things again to farm up in the background once they do become farmable. And then in little boxes signaling in the near future, I would really start to think about planning for these 2, so Leviathan and Ahsoka, because you will be waiting for the Conquest units in order to unlock them, but I would try and prepare to have them unlocked close to when you have those Conquest units, just because they are incredibly valuable. Ahsoka for her resource event, and of course Leviathan for just fleet shard performance, but also GAC performance. Having all 3 capital ships is a good thing. And I should also mention a kind of mini requirement for Ahsoka is Ezra. Not a requirement for her, but you really need her for her team to perform well. So I would also maybe try lining up Ahsoka for when you unlock Ezra through Conquest, which actually might be a little bit later because I think he was only recently added into Proving Grounds, so maybe that's a reason to go for Leviathan before you go for Ahsoka, just because you'll be waiting on Ezra. So yeah, that's it in terms of the plan, and that's it in terms of the review. Let me know if you have any questions or feedback, and thank you very much for letting me review your roster, and I'll see you next time. Alright, so we're on to the next roster review, and this one will be for Derser 99. So they've provided a little bit of context before we get started. So they are an occasional spender, Lightspeed bundles, episode pass, never a conquest pass, which is interesting considering what's down here. Sometimes Zetas and Omegas. Brief account plans, are not too sure, which is absolutely fine. We'll maybe have a look at some good next steps. They are close to unlocking GL Ray and also Great Mother's team, finishing off Zetas on teams like Revan and Tuscans, which is interesting, but Zetas come pretty slowly. So this, I think, will be something to bear in mind, this Zeta issue. In terms of favorite game mode, JAC, they would like to make love to Conquest, but not in a good way, which is understandable. I quite enjoy Conquest, but I can see why it's a bit of a pain and a bit of a grind as well. So let's jump into their statistics. So here we are. So they've been playing for just shy of a year. I think that's about 10 months probably. They have purchased quite a few Lightspeed bundles, so are sitting at quite a nice GP level. Their guild, the Republic Raiders, TRR, 220 million. Mod score is definitely on the lower end. That can quite often come from being a big purchaser of Lightspeed bundles, but I would recommend maybe investing a little bit more in mods just to spread them around a bit and be able to do key things like journey unlocks and assault battles. I have a feeling maybe more refreshes of mod energy might be due, and maybe prioritize that a little bit more over some of the other ones, because you already have quite a big roster already, so might be worth focusing on things like mods. In terms of their guild performance, so they're actually doing, quite interestingly, the crate raid, which I would say is quite unusual. Usually when I see people aren't doing the most recent raid, Order 66, they're doing the speeder bike raid, but this guild is doing the crate raid. They are getting, I think, the third box, which does work out to the same amount of Mark II as you would get from Order 66, but of course they won't be getting any Mark III, which will be a bit of a limitation, especially when it comes to getting to higher relic levels for some of the unlocks that they might want to do. Their own contribution to this raid is good, well above average from the guild, and are getting a decent amount of Mark II from the personal track, but again they just won't be getting that Mark III, and this is why I've crudely blocked out the Mark III. And I'm not quite sure on their raid frequency. It does tend to chop and change. I landed on about once every 8 days, but that frequency seems to be getting a bit quicker recently, so maybe they are getting better in terms of tickets in the raid, so the amount of weekly Mark II might be a little bit higher. In terms of territory battles, still doing both of the Hoth ones actually. I haven't built up my my program to take into account Dark Side Hoth at the moment, so I've just guessed for what the Geo stars would be. It doesn't matter too much because this really only contributes a tiny amount of crystals, so it won't matter that much in terms of the overall calculations, but this is roughly where they're at. They are over 200 million, so could be doing rote, but I think it may be a good idea that they're not, considering some of the other performances. So yeah, one to keep an eye on. In terms of their own performance, are now in Carbonite 1, so should hopefully move up to Bronzium at the end of this GAC, which would be great. It would increase crystals a little bit more, and they're starting to have a decently sized roster, so should be able to compete. Fleet rank, so they said, I think it was between like 50th and 60th, so they may not even be getting, between like 40th and 60th, so they will be getting 50 crystals some days and not every day. I've just kept it at 50, so this might be a tiny bit of an over estimation in terms of the amount of crystals. You might, in reality, it might be like 290, but the way I've got it set up, it doesn't take into like averages into account. So, and then Colosseum rank, they said they are about 300. I might actually, so this was submitted a couple of weeks ago. I may check when looking to the roster and maybe ask them afterwards whether they've seen a change from this, because they did mention they're buying the episode pass. So I'm curious to see if they were able to unlock Maul and maybe jump up a bit in Colosseum rank, but we'll have to have a look. But this, I think they also asked for a little bit of advice on how they could increase this, which I can maybe go into. I have a feeling it's just going to be a case of being active and looking up what other people are doing in terms of like YouTube guides and stuff, just looking for the tips and tricks, because if they are buying the episode pass, they should have a nice advantage over free-to-play players. Firstly, because they'll be getting characters to 4 stars, which gives a little bit extra power, and also they will be getting a little bit more level up currency as well. So I think this is something to keep in mind for the next era, and I'm going to try put out some videos on overall tips and strategies ahead of the next era in terms of getting higher overall Colosseum ranks. Yeah, so in terms of assault battles, I think they weren't sure on a few of them, but have a decent amount of challenge tier 1s. There are some that they could pick up, ground war, and of course the newer ones. I'll have to check. I think I always have a brief look over the account in order to put together these graphics, and I think they might have some of these characters up and running, but maybe not at the point of doing the assault battles at least R5. And so this could be an area of an improvement, and maybe starting to push some of these challenge tiers up a bit, because I think they might start to have the roster in order to do that, and no resource GLs, which is fine at this GP. I think that's completely expected. They currently only have SLKR as their GL, but we'll be at the point when they're starting to look at things like Leia and Jabba, so that would be another thing to look out for. So let's jump over to their account. Alright, so here we are. So as I mentioned, they currently have SLKR as their GL, Relic 10, so I've gone all in on him. He's pretty decent Relic 10, to be honest, especially if it's your only GL. So I imagine this is an absolute weapon in lower GAC, because we'll have, I imagine, Relic Delta of at least 5 in most matches. Of course 5 is the maximum, but you get what I mean. So this will be the main power in their account. In terms of other stuff they're working on, looks like they have maybe like the Tusken Lightspeed bundle, or just working on the Tuskens. I imagine Tusken Lightspeed bundle, working on them, which I'll maybe go into in a little bit in terms of overall Zeta strategy, and maybe try point you in the direction of some resources in order to determine the best Zetas to apply. I would say some of these Zeta choices are maybe not completely necessary. I guess it's fine to like round out the teams you're working on in terms of applying the Zetas, but there's definitely some Zetas that you can skip that don't really impact that much, and especially things on maybe weaker teams that maybe they're okay Zetas, but eventually you're not going to be using that team that much, so maybe it makes sense to save those Zetas for other things. But I'll go through that in a little bit more detail later, maybe point you towards some things that can help with that. So like Tuskens, looks like we've got maybe some Imperial troopers on the march here, bounty hunters. Yeah, so as our like Lightspeed bundle focus, they're also working on things like Great Mothers, which I'll go into, Old Republic. So a good solid starting point, but we'll now have a look at some of their next targets and journey guides that they're working towards, and then maybe swing back and look at a few more of these characters. So I'm going to start with Rey, which they mentioned they're working on. I imagine would have bought the Lightspeed bundle before, 4 million GP, or maybe a lot of them are Relic 6, so might have got the version 2, which is which is fine as well. So basically just need a few relics and they're done. So 2 relics on BB-8 and Jedi Training Rey. So I'm also of the opinion, if you are so close to a GL, absolutely correct to keep going with it. Of course, you won't quite yet have the optimal Rey team because you wouldn't have unlocked Ben Solo through Proving Grounds. You should have been able to at least start Proving Grounds, and I imagine you should be able to do the majority of the tiers with your R10 SOKR for sure, which should be a huge Relic Delta advantage because I think they're all Relic 3, so you should be on the way to getting Ben Solo, but I think that would be still probably about a year away if you're not refreshing anything or buying the Ben Solo Lightspeed bundle. So because of that, again, in terms of Zetas, I'd apply all of the Zetas to Rey, but maybe not necessarily to the rest of her team. Well, I guess some of them are okay, like the Zetas on Resistance Hero Finn and Poe are fine, and eventually you'll want to spin them off into Zori team. So they're decent, but they're not like top priority. So yeah, definitely get Rey up to relics, will be useful overall in like Bronzium, Chromium, GAC, but you'll definitely be waiting on Ben Solo to take that team up even higher in terms of power. But yeah, definitely worthwhile finishing. And then maybe also Zori might be another nice quick extra really good team, because you could just run Rey with whoever, doesn't even have to be Resistance. You could run her with your whatever Jedi or unaligned Force users you have, and then if you're needing other teams, getting Zori and running her with Resistance Hero Poe, Finn, Rose, and Finn Lead would be another really good team, especially a sort of lower level GAC, and even at higher level GAC Kyber 1, it still has quite a lot of nice uses, so is a very good team to work on. Moving on, so Leia, I'm always going to check Leia because of the Lightspeed tokens that are coming out. So you'll be getting R2D2, Commander Luke already have 3PO and Chewie, and a Bounty Hunter 1 on Bausch. So still a decent amount of work needed here. You would need, I think, these 5, 6, 7. So I think still quite a bit away from Leia, so maybe not the first priority for me after Rey, because I think there's maybe a few other areas worth going into before, but definitely something worth thinking about in the near future. And that is because we have Executor. Now, Executor you are extremely close to. The limiting factor will be Razor Crest, so I might actually, let me do that now. I'm going to check how are you doing with Beskar Armor Mandalorian. Alright, so I think doesn't seem like you're farming him directly, which is fine because these will all come out through Lightspeed tokens in April. So given we're now getting to the end of January, by the time you farm these up, we're getting to the point where those Lightspeed tokens will come out anyway. So for Executor, as long as you're picking up Razor Crest through the Fleet currency store, you should be on track to unlock Executor as soon as these 2 Lightspeed tokens come out, and you'll just have to relic TIE Fighter Pilot and a few more relics in these. But I would really recommend being ready as soon as those Lightspeed tokens come out, and actually really the date that you'll have to be ready for will probably be the 15th of May. That is just when the Executor unlock will come around after these Lightspeed tokens are out. So 15th of May, I'd really recommend being ready for Executor, because I think Fleet is the big thing to work on, because you are currently sort of between 40th and 60th. So if you can really improve that crystal income, that would be huge for your account and help other things like getting more signal data through Cantina, getting more mods through Mod Energy, that sort of thing. So I think Fleets for me would be the #1 focus. And because of that, I'm just going to check profundity as well. I think, yeah, I mean, a little bit of progress here. Some like year 12, Relicamon, Motma. So a decent amount of progress. The big thing is that it doesn't look like you've started Outrider. Distance U-Wing is also a very difficult farm, so unlikely that you'd be able to unlock profundity before Executor, but would be maybe a longer term target, because of course Outrider is needed for Jabba as well, so might be a good idea just to slow farm Outrider in the background to get it ready for Jabba and profundity in the future, but I would still say Executor before profundity based on what I'm seeing here. And then moving on to Jabba, so have a little bit, maybe more than most, of progress here. So I think through maybe some lightspeed bundles you have Jawa and Uror. I can never say that. It's cruel for Scottish people. The other requirements, like if you go for Leia, you'll have Bausch. Fennec will be a lightspeed token. And then, yeah, maybe I think that would be about it. So still a bit of work again for this one. But especially with your mod score, I think would be a very good target at some point, and maybe I'll try factor that into the plan. And then just a few other things to check. So you said you're working on Great Mothers, which is why I wanted to check these guys. So Great Mothers, good progress. I wouldn't say Balin overall would be a good target at this point, because I think there's a few other areas like fleet and assault battles that really need to be taken care of. But I'll maybe have a look at your overall Night Sister team, because it seems that you're working on that at the moment and would be a very good team to have just in general for the assault battle, but also for GAC. And I hesitate to say this, but also for Conquest, if you do want to start improving there. But that, I guess that's your decision. Bo-Katan, this is lightspeed bundle dependent. You'll, for the Executor as well, but you'll get, lightspeed token dependent. You'll get the Mandalorian lightspeed token and one for any light side Mandalorian, but it's probably not the biggest target for me for an account like this, because it's a nice sort of extra team, good in TB and for GAC. But I think there's a few other priorities for me. Jedi Knight Luke Skywalker, so obviously this feeds into Jabba and will also help with an assault battle. And you do have very good progress towards Jedi Knight Luke. You already have Hermit Yoda and Wampa, which are two of the difficult farms. These two you need for Leia. So Chewbacca will be a lightspeed token in March, and Commander Luke Skywalker in February, so next month. And after that, it would just be a case of these three, but two of them are also requirements for other characters as well. So this would definitely, I think, fit into the plan somewhere. It would be a nice team to have even before you unlock Jabba. And then of course Jedi Master Luke you are also quite close to. If we think about a scenario where you've already unlocked Leia and Jedi Knight Luke, you will have, you will already have C-3PO, Chewbacca, Jedi Knight Luke of course if you want to relic him up, R2-D2 from Lightspeed Token Leia. So it's really just Han Solo, who again you need for Jabba. So all of these really feed in to each other, and Jedi Master Luke is quite often, I would say, maybe the last one to go for, and maybe just because he's not as useful as the other ones. But if you do go for all of those other options, you will essentially just have Jedi Master Luke unlocked anyway, especially because you're going for Rey, who needs R7 Jedi Training Rey, so you will effectively just have Jedi Master Luke for free at some point. So that's it in terms of the journey guides. There are a few other teams I wanted to check, right? So we have, I think the first one I want to check is Night Sisters, because that's what you mentioned you are working on. So it looks like you have the Night Sister bundle for the older ones. You have Great Mothers, Morgan. In terms, you mentioned Zetas, like these would be very good options in terms of Zetas, Morgan and Great Mothers, just because they're going to transform a team you already have really into an immediately powerful team. So I would definitely prioritize Zetas for these guys over things like Tuskens, Old Republic, that sort of thing. Again, I'll go into Zetas a little bit more, but even without these two at relics, you will have a very good team anyway with these two, and well, these three really. Night Sister Spirit, you can maybe get Night Sister Spirit up to at least relic 5, maybe even higher later on, because she is the big damage dealer in that team. And then in the meantime, you can just stick whoever you want. I think Merrin would be a good option, especially because you have her at relics. And then maybe just Talia. I think she can give some turn meter to the team. So, and then you can start to work on these more in the background, which you already are, because they feed into an assault battle. So yeah, this is, I think, a very good, almost like side project to be working on while you work on some of the other things like fleets and GLs. So yeah, I think Night Sisters are a great choice, which you've already been working on. I also wanted to check Old Republic because you mentioned you're working on Revan. Yeah, so it looks like you've unlocked Revan. I think Revan would be a decent character to relic, just will be a nice home for your Jedi, and will eventually work into things like Jedi Master Luke, and you've already put some investment in there. Again, talking about Zetas, I really wouldn't apply any maybe to the Old Republic team apart from Jedi Knight Revan, and even not all of his are 100% necessary, because Jedi Knight Revan, you can use him with other Jedi as well, like you already have in your account. So yeah, decent thing to be continuing on with, but maybe not first priority. In terms of other things, so oh yes, I wanted to check fleet, because that is an area of improvement potentially, and try to work out what you could be running. Yeah, so probably you're just running, oh, you have Malevolence. Are you running like a Malevolence fleet? I imagine you are. That's maybe one of the, do you have the, yeah, potentially that's possibly one of your fleets. I would say that is Home 1 viable for this account. So you have a 5-star Rebel B-Wing, which is interesting. So that's that bit done. If we maybe filter for Rebels, you can use Biggs, you can use the Y-Wing as well. So the missing thing would of course be Raven's Claw. I think this could maybe be an okay option. I'm just going to check what you said about your fleet arena. Okay, so there is like Executors and Profundities and Leviathans in your fleet arena. So what I'd do is I'd check what's your top 20 looking like. What's the lower top 10s? Is that all Executors and Profundities? If that's the case, I'd maybe not focus on the Home 1 fleet in the meantime, and I just wait until you unlock Executor in about May. But if it's not that strong, if there's still like Negotiators and like Tarkin fleets in the top 50 and especially top 20, this might be an okay side project, because you'd want to work on Drogon anyway. You already have his ship up at 5 stars, which is more than most. You have a relic Akbar, you have Biggs or Rebel Y-Wing, which you can put in the starting lineup. You would just need to maybe just get these two to gear 12. You'd eventually want Bistan at relics for Profundity, but I think gear 12 would be fine for now. Or you could maybe run Biggs, Ghost and Ravensclaw, or Rebel Y-Wing actually will probably be the better tanks. So Rebel Y-Wing, Ghost and Ravensclaw in the starting lineup, and then have Rebel B-Wing as a reinforcement. So really the only thing you'll really have to work on outside of existing farms would be Kal Katarn and his ship, but I think that would definitely be worthwhile, because I guess a small investment just to get better fleet placement, and also even once you unlock things like Executor and Profundity, Home 1 will still be very useful in GAC, and also Kal Katarn is a requirement for Starkiller. So you already have Mara Jade, so going for Starkiller in the future could be an option. So that might be a nice little side project, just because you've already got some quite good progress in your Rebel fleet. and it would be really good to be getting higher fleet placement, even if it's just like the top 20 or top 50 consistently. I think having the home 1 fleet would be great. I'm really enjoying using it in my own fleet shard, and I think it's really good. So could be a good option in the meantime before you unlock Executor. What else? Okay, so let's maybe round out the assault battles. So let's quickly hop back to that graphic just to see what's missing. Okay, so we can definitely have more work in ground war. I think potentially CT, higher CTs for this one with the Night Sisters, which you're already working on. I did see a little bit of Imperial Trooper investment, so I'll maybe check in on that. And I think these two would be the bigger ones actually. So maybe not too concerned with higher challenge tiers for all of these. It would be possible to do CT3 of Places of Power with SLKR. There are some guides on how to do that on YouTube. Essentially, you just need to mod Kylo Ren unmasked for a lot of health, and there's a way to grind out a manual win. It does take a long time to do, so might not be worth it in terms of time, but would be possible to do that at CT3 with what you have. Military might maybe have a quick check on Rebels. With the Phoenix, you should be able to do this, maybe with CLS, and you have Mon Mothma, so that could be a possibility. So I'll check on Jedi and Imperial Troopers mainly, and also these two. Okay, so Jedi, right, so we have investment in power. You have the Conquest Omicron, which is interesting, so maybe you've changed your mind on Conquest. So yeah, you will actually start to have quite a good Conquest team with Great Mothers and Padawan Omicron, Padawan Obi-Wan, I guess you can call him Padawan Omicron. So yeah, you should start to be able to push into decent hard mode. You have Master Qui-Gon as well, so I think this does seem like a very good option because things like Executor are still going to be a bit away. I think for sure working on these two to Relic 7 will be a good option, and also should help for the Jedi Assault battle because you have Kelleran Beck, or you can use Jedi Knight Revan as the lead, and with Relic Delta, maybe with these two R7, throw in the other Jedi you have, play around with it. I think you should be able to do that at Challenge Tier 1, especially with Relic Delta. So that would be great. I also want to check Imperial Troopers. Alright, okay. That's a lot of high Relic Imperial Troopers. And you have General Veers and his Zeta. So you're actually... I'm not really recommending going for it because you have to go out of your way, and you can do those with other characters, but you may be able to do both Rebel Roundup and whatever the Empire one is called. I always forget the name of Forest Moon, especially with a bit of Relic Delta help. You might, for Challenge Tier 3, you might need General Veers relics, but considering that's the only relic you need, and you'd want to get like Piet to Relic 8 anyway, and you have all of like you have the optimal team, so it'd be General Veers, Piet, Moff Gideon. Maybe not for one of them, I think he doesn't help, but either Moff Gideon or Scout, Dark Trooper, Range Trooper. So I think that would be a very good option just because you already have the majority of this team up and running already. And then finally, I wanted to check on Imperial Remnant. Where are you? There we go. So you have Enoch at Relics and these two at Gear 12. So maybe not straight away, but that's another thing to keep in mind because you'll want to be working on these anyway for your Night Sister team. So this I might put maybe later on in the plan, I would say. So yeah, I think there's a lot of good things to be working on. I am also, what I'm going to now is I'm going to talk a little bit more about Zetas. Right, so I've jumped away to this guide. So this guide is actually from Arnold, I don't know how to say his name, but the biggest YouTuber in Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes. So I'm sure I don't need to introduce him just because he is by far the biggest content creator. He does have a guide in terms of what Zetas are good to apply, which is quite rare. It's often something people ignore because a lot of streamers are later game players where Zetas really aren't an issue, so they don't have the problem of having to think about which is the best Zeta to apply, which is a real problem early game. I'm sure there's other guides out there, so if anyone does have other suggestions of guides or resources to look at, there is, I think, a bot that I might also check that can give recommendations on which Zeta to apply, which I'll maybe have a quick look at. But this isn't a bad resource. So he has an all Zeta ranked thing. It is, I guess at this point it's maybe slightly out of date. It doesn't look like he's got a lot of the newer ones, but that's fine. A lot of the characters you're looking at will be older ones. So like, for example, in terms of what Zetas to ignore, like you can go and just have a look at, like, for example, like the Captain Phasma one, and some of the, I'm sure some of the Tuscan ones will be in here. So this is a decent one to have a look at in terms of, is there any Zetas I can maybe skip? And then also for teams, like for example Jedi, there's a bit of a guide in terms of maybe focus on these ones and not necessarily like the Hermit Yoda. It's not like 100% accurate, but it's at least a good guidance, and I think it would be helpful for you to at least have a starting point once you start to get more familiar with the kits and what is a good option. You might be able to start making those decisions more for yourself as well. But it's a good thing. Like for example, like there's loads of the Inquisitorius ones that are just not helpful at all. Imperial Troopers, yeah. So that this is a good one. Like definitely avoid. You might have already applied the Dark Trooper one actually, but it shows which are the most important ones. And especially when you are very low in Zetas, I definitely try and only focus on the most important ones. And maybe even if ones are like middle priority, maybe even try skip those and save Zetas for things like GLs and such. So this would just be something to have a look at. And then also I mentioned there's a bot. So Hotbot you can use, I think this is free, this thing, it may not be, but you can use Zeta Next function that will maybe highlight some of the more important ones to apply. What I would say for this isn't really taking into account what you're farming at the moment. So these would be the most important looking at your roster overall, but you will know yourself which teams you're working on. For example, you're working on Great Mothers, so we'll maybe prioritize that over something like Zori, who you don't have up and running yet, I don't think, although I might check that. This would be another tool just to see which ones are the more important Zetas that I could be applying. And then also just ask around. I'm sure, like, feel free to ask me or other people in your guild perhaps, in terms of, is this a good Zeta worth applying? Because I think that would really help you in terms of maybe saving more Zetas for more important characters like GLs and stuff like that, and for the Great Mothers, for example. So yeah, just something to bear in mind. So that did remind me that I wanted to check resistance. Do you have Zori? Oh, you've got Zori at gear 12. So even at gear 12, again, you might need 1 or 2 Zetas. Again, check all of these guides and stuff like that. I can't remember off the very top of my head, but if you do want to know, I can maybe try and check that for you. Even at gear 12, you can stick her in with the other relic characters, and in like Bronzium, GAC, that would still be a very good team. Might be a good idea for relics at some point, but maybe, I don't know, they come up with a resistance lightspeed token, and Zori would be a very good use of that. So for now, gear 12 would actually be fine. Relic Delta might be a bit of a pain, but shouldn't be too much of an issue at lower GAC, because the good thing about this team with Zori is that it can really become like a turn meter train. So if you get a good head start, it doesn't really matter so much that you're at lower relics. So yeah, that would be another nice thing to work on. Oh, and that did remind me, another thing I wanted to check was error units. So, yes. So, right, you are getting the characters to 4 stars through the episode pass. So I think there is more you could be doing in terms of progressing through the Colosseum ranks. I think especially now with 5 of them unlocked, with the right daily play, you should really be able to start to push up through like tier 4, tier 5, tier 6 without investing anything extra. It would just maybe require, again, just look through video guides. Feel free to ask me as well in terms of like specific bosses, because I think with 4-star characters and 5 of them unlocked, you should be able to really start to push up through those tiers. And at this point, you should have a lot of era level up currency by doing the episode track. So yeah, I'll again try to put a bit more of a guide on Colosseum for the next era, but I think even in this era there is stuff you can be doing to increase. For example, it's difficult to give specific advice because it depends a lot on what tier you're at, but for example, like the Zephyr Guardians, it's worth just looking up like a strategy on how to beat them, because it all revolves around the shields that they have, and you want to be very careful to remove all of their shields, but try not to do damage after you remove all of their shields, and just sort of patiently like work them down over time to things like the Yotas, where you'd want to probably open up with Stormtrooper looks, AoE, and then just like potentially like try pass like speed to him through Asajj and stuff like that. It does depend. There's like a lot of permutations now, so it's difficult to give advice. But also another thing is maybe not era level 45, but when you get to era level 60, like IG starts to become like the better lead, because you get his contract very quickly with Maul. So yeah, I think there's, just in terms of the strategy, there's maybe some improvement that could be done there, but feel free to ask for specific ones, or yeah, and I'm sure myself or someone will be able to help. Right, I think the final thing in the account I want to check is raid. So you're still doing crate, but you have Keller and Beck just at Relic 0, but could of course be pushed to maybe Relic 5 or even Relic 7, and he will be able to solo at the very least the 300,000, and at the very most the 600,000 tier. Emphas Nest as well at Relic 6 should be able to solo the 300, maybe even the 450 with Relic Delta now, I'm not too sure. Shakti and the Jedi Vanguards, you might be able to put some sort of team together with like Temple Guard, Qui-Gon, Jedi Consular, Shakti, and maybe Plo. You can maybe put some Plor Barris, you can maybe put a little bit of gear on, maybe that's another 300,000. So you might just on your own be able to do about 1 million raid score with not that much investment. I think I remember in like my comments you might have asked about Tarkin, and I would say yes, definitely you don't need Tarkin because you have a lot of other good options. And in terms of your guild, so still of course doing Crate Dragon Raid, but if we have a look at the units, I imagine most people at this point should have Keller and Beck. So 39, so I guess maybe encourage people who haven't done so to unlock Keller and Beck through the episode quests, which everyone should be able to do. And just using Keller and Beck and everyone getting 300,000, some people, including yourself, should be able to get more. With the other teams you have, you should be able to hit, I imagine, like the 20 million box, and then get the same amount of Mark II you're getting, but also get Mark III raid currency, and that's not including the personal rewards that you'll be able to do. So I think you are an officer in the guild, and I would really recommend trying to push for doing Order 66, because everyone should be able to do it with the Lightspeed tokens that we've been given. And if they don't agree to that, I would maybe consider looking elsewhere. And I think it is important to, even if you're not getting much Mark III, to try find a guild that is doing Order 66 and just get that income going over time. But I think your guild should be able to, especially 220 million, loads of people should have, everyone should have Keller and Beck, and people will have other stuff. So like, I'm not going to pick on anyone, but this is a 13 million account. I imagine they have like a lot of stuff that they could do. Yep, they've got the clones, they have Killer and Beck, they have Jedi Master Mace, so they're going to be doing several million. I think it would be good to push for Order 66 within your guild. And I think that's it in terms of the account. That was quite a long one, so I'm not meaning to do a roster review of this person. Let's close that down. But I'm going to put together a quick plan, and I'll jump to that now. Alright, so I put together a quick plan. So there's a few asterisks in this plan due to what I discussed in terms of I'm not too sure what the rest of your fleet shard looks like in terms of recommending our pilots and a few other bits and pieces, but I'll go through this now. So I'll work backwards from April. So I think Executor should be your number one target for good fleet performance, so you should be able to meet the requirements by the end of April and then unlock mid-May. But that of course is still quite a while away. It's probably pretty much 4 months until you can unlock Executor, which is quite a long time, and why I think it's still worth working on secondary fleets before that, especially because as we've gone through, you already have quite a lot of progress towards the Home 1 fleet. So if we move back to the start, I think this would be, if you're going to do this, I think it would be worthwhile doing pretty much straight away just to get that good crystal income with the Home 1. So it would be working on Captain Drogon, probably 2 relics, because you'll need him relics anyway for Leia. But you mentioned you're in a bit of a Zeta crunch, so you wouldn't necessarily need to apply the Zeta straight away just because you're going to be using them as pilots. Zetas do help a little bit, but they're not crucial. The important thing would be getting him to relics. Then Cal Katarn you could also take to relics, but you could also try seeing how it goes with him just gear 12 in the starting lineup, especially if you are able to level up the Rebel Y-Wing, which I really recommend working on. Actually, let's just add that in for clarity's. Alright, so I've just popped these ships in. I don't normally put ships into the actual plan. I normally just mention them, but I think these would be important because if you were to go for Home 1, it's really just these 2 ships that you'll need to work on. You already have this at 5 stars and is a pilotless ship, which is really good. And then also Raven's Claw you would need to work on to make that fleet work. You already have B-Wing at 5 stars, so we just need Captain Drogon as the pilot. And if you can get that up quite quickly, it would be a good short-term option while you work on Executor, and even after you unlock Executor, it's still a useful ship in GAC. And the good thing is it feeds into a lot of requirements like Captain Drogon for Leia, Rebel Y-Wing for Jedi Knight Luke as well. So it's a very valuable farm, I think. And then the other thing to be doing is of course finish off Great Mothers. I would recommend for now just using these 3 and then 2 of the ones you already have. So I would recommend using Meryn and maybe Talia, but you can mix and match for 5v5. Will still be quite powerful even with those 5, and then maybe work on the Peridia pals a little bit later. And that's because I think more importantly is you'd want to finish getting Rey, as you've mentioned. Obviously you don't have the optimal team for her, but the good thing about Rey is her kit works with all light side characters, so you can quite often find like a nice team to use even though you don't have like Ben Solo, so you should be able to make something work. And then also these 2, so you already have Padawan Obi-Wan up at relic, so it's really just Master Qui-Gon. You already have the Zetas, and I think getting the assault battles up and running should be one of your main focuses, and you're very close to these, and will also help for getting the ground war assault battle. Just having a couple of relic Jedi, and I'll leave this as a wild card, but you're also working on Jedi Knight Revan, so especially if you unlock Jedi Knight Revan, that should help at least with challenge tier 1 in ground war until you can unlock Jedi Knight Luke, who's needed for challenge tier 3. In terms of other stuff, so this is mostly like good resource things to work on while you're waiting on Executor. So I put Zori, I guess is not a resource thing, that is just to make use of the resistance lightspeed bundle that you've got. So just plugging Zori in there will create another really good team for GAC, and also a little bit for Conquest as well if you choose to do that. And General Veers would just plug into the Imperial Trooper team that you already have. I think all of them are Relic 7, so it would just be General Veers. Again, a decent GAC team, especially at lower GAC levels, but will help get you 2 assault battles at challenge tier 3, which would be incredibly good. The reason I've put an asterisk next to them is that for these I would recommend trying to make it work at gear 12. Might not be possible in this world of Relic Delta we have at the moment, but the thing about these two characters is they are very much support characters and they don't do the damage, so if you're able to make them work at gear 12, I would try do that, but I'd maybe hoard gear. So if that doesn't work, if you try the assault battle and can't do challenge tier 3 with gear 12 General Veers, then you'd be able just to take them up to relics and complete that. So that's why there's an asterisk here. And then also I think might be a good time to finish off the Imperial Remnant Iridia Pals, which you're currently farming, so that's why I haven't put them. I think you still have some stars to do, some relics to do, so I put them here. Would be good to get that assault battle, and then you can stick Peridia and Night Trooper into the Great Mother's team. This one, like if you're struggling with things like Zetas and relics, you could maybe push back a bit if you wanted to. It's definitely good to do sooner rather than later, but you'd only be losing a couple of months of that assault battle, so worthwhile. But if you do need to push something back, that could be one of the options. Then, as I mentioned, Executor, and then I think in the background of all of this, when you do have like spare resources and relics or lightspeed tokens, it'd be worth sort of working on Leia. So by the time we get all of those lightspeed tokens, by the time you unlock Executor, you're very close to getting Leia, so that would be good. And same thing for Jedi Knight Luke, you will have most of his requirements after you complete Leia, so Rebel Officer, Leia Organa and Captain Han, so you'll be then very close to Jedi Knight Luke. And then in the longer term, I would then recommend going for Jabba next, just because he will fit into what you've already done, all of those lightspeed tokens and such. So that's the suggested plan. Feel free to get in touch if you have any questions, or we can maybe discuss some of the areas I'm less sure about where the asterisks are. It might be good to get a little bit more information. I haven't had time to have that discussion before making this video, but definitely happy to do that afterwards and maybe make some changes. So yeah, thank you very much for letting me have a look at your roster, and I'll see you next time. Okay, so I'm here with the next roster review, and this will be for UEmika 100. So a little bit of background on them. So they are lightspeed spender, a lot of lightspeed bundles and episode pass here and there, as well as the conquest pass. In terms of their plans, going for Jabba next, which is usually a good idea. Poncho Bros, Peridia and Balin, Starkiller on the way, Zephyr Mission, Leia, and then Bo-Katan, Mandalore in April, and Gas, and then also SOKR later in the year. So it looks like they're very close to a lot of things, I would guess. So I think part of what I'm going to look at is maybe this order, or just a general good order to go about getting these. They are also, and I think this is from the guild, are close to doing Zepho and the Mando mission, which would be great, and they're looking to contribute to that, which is very nice. And Happy New Year. I am doing this 2 weeks after the New Year, but Happy New Year to yourself. I hope you're having a good year so far. Favorite game mode, GAC, but Relic Delta. I added the sad face because I assume this is annoyed at Relic Delta, which is, yeah, it can be a little bit challenging. So let's move on to their summary. So active age is 1 year, about 1 year and a third. Yep, so this isn't actually continuous because they have said that they started playing it back in 2021 with the Mara Jade release and left and came back at the end of 2023. So yeah, and they probably had another gap in there at some point. So these days are just based off their Galactic War. So in terms of how often are they doing 12 battles a day? So maybe back in 2021 they weren't even doing that. I don't know how difficult Galactic War was back then, but that's to say not continuous days they've been playing, which will be something to take on board. GP 6.3 million, part of quite a large guild, especially for a roster this size, so 540 million, which is a pretty big one. I might have just reviewed another Republic guild. I don't know if they're part of the same alliance. This might be a very big alliance. I'm not too sure. Mod score, so about 1 for each, which I would say is on the low end. So that does of course bring like mod resource events up in terms of priority, and also focusing refreshes on mod energy as well would be something that would be advised, because as they've mentioned, they've bought a lot of lightspeed bundles, so this tends to happen. You just tend to have a roster that's a lot bigger than the mods you have, but that just means you have to refocus a little bit in terms of that, and they are prioritizing Jabba, I think they said from the description, which sounds like the right decision. Guild performance, so 130 million in the raid, which is pretty good. That's going to be like the 4th from last box, something like that. So that's a handy bit of Mark 3 they'll be getting. Their own personal raid score is 1.5 million, which is a bit below the average guild score, but if the guild's not complaining about it, I wouldn't push too much higher, because you're 1 away or maybe 2 away from the maximum personal raid box. So yeah, I think you're sitting pretty nicely in terms of guild, in terms of raid score at the moment. Return of the Empire is also quite high at 31, which is decent in terms of their own performance. So are in Bronzium 5, so may perhaps move back to Carbonite at the end of this season. They are working, it looks like, in a lot of GAC teams, so I imagine they'll be at the point of maybe starting to push up through the ranks, and I wouldn't be surprised if they can even get to, let's say, Chromium relatively soon, given their roster. Fleet rank, they said, I think between 3rd and 10. I've just put 5. I know that's not quite the average position, but it might reflect better the average crystals they're getting, which is about 600 a day, which is good, but of course can be improved a little bit. And then Colosseum rank is 200. I might check to see if they've been buying the episode pass and getting those characters at 4 stars. I want A for slightly better Colosseum performance, but then also those Kyber Lightspeed tokens is something worth considering, because I know they did mention they bought the episode pass now and then, but I think what's changed now is that maybe the episode pass is even more valuable now, so it might be even better to buy in place of some Lightspeed bundles. Maybe not all Lightspeed bundles, but might be something worth considering in terms of where money's spent, but of course by no means or no pressure to spend anything more than you want to. Yeah, so good income here. Assault battles, the original ones are getting there. They mentioned Balin, so perhaps through Great Mothers this could be pushed up to CT3. I think they might have accidentally missed out Rebel Roundup, so I've just guessed CT1. I can maybe have a quick check when I look at the roster, but I'm not seeing immediate improvements that can be made. Things like SOKR that will come. We'll maybe see how close they are to our Troopers team for these two, and then I'm also going to check on Reva because they're part of quite a big guild, so it might be the sort of account that gets Reva even before they unlock the Inquisitors, and of course we're getting the Inquisitor Lightspeed tokens, so that's something to check. These two, I think they've mentioned both of these in their plans, and I would definitely agree, definitely worth focusing. I think from looking at it now, I agree that Jab should maybe be the priority, but I'll have a look to see how progressed you are along certain things, just because I think mods is probably one of the most important things at the moment for this account, but these two would be very good income resources. Okay, so let's jump over to their account. All right, here we are. So yeah, this is just their profile again. So let's head into their collection, see what they've got. So only one GL, and that GL is not quite up at, I would say, appropriate relics yet. At least relic 7 for a GL, maybe even higher. So that would be something to work on finishing. Getting the ultimate, I know some people like to hold off on Jedi Master Luke Ultimate and use it to get other ones more quickly, so that could be an option. Oh, I've also spotted Jedi Master Kenobi in here as well. Yeah, so I think these two would of course be priorities in terms of relics. I'm sure they're working on them and perhaps got them through recent Lightspeed bundles, but since all of the farming's done and they've got the Zetas on, which can be a big bottleneck, just getting the relics would be ideal. I wonder, is there a way of filtering for Galactic Legends? I don't know. Is there any more hiding in here? I'm not too sure. Oh, they've got Grand Inquisitor already, so that's interesting. Commander Ahsoka, I've noticed that's probably through a Lightspeed bundle, I imagine. I don't think there's any more GLs. I guess I guess they might pop up, but yeah, that would be the first thing I'm noticing. Profundity maybe as well. Let's check ships. What ships do they have? Yep, Profundity at 4 stars, which is great. Executor, which I think they said they are using to climb in Fleet Arena with the Mark 6. They have Rogue One at 3 stars, which is more than enough. So yeah, I think ships are in good place, and you should really be able to use these to help climb in GAC. Just set one of them on defense, one on offense, and you should be golden. Yes, I'm not going to focus too much on ships. I think you're in a good place. Of course, Leviathan eventually, but I think you've got other stuff to be working on. Let's have a bit more of a look through the roster. So R7 Hera, which is through maybe the Profundity Lightspeed bundle or something. I think the R7 like Heras must be through another bundle. So we got Chrysanthemum. Is this a Jabba Lightspeed bundle? I see. I think Inquisitorius. Oh, there's a lot. There's a lot of different pieces and stuff here that we could really work on, which is great. Yeah, this is too much information for my mind at the moment. We got Marok, we got Padawan Obi-Wan, we got General Veers, interesting, worth checking on Troopers perhaps, and then a bunch of Gear 12, a lot of Gear 12. Yep, so okay, let's have a quick look through some of the farms they mentioned. Oh, they've got Jedi Knight Luke Skywalker. That's another thing to take note, because that means they're going to be close to a lot of other things. So let's hop over to Jabba. So it looks like, so I think they were able to get the recent Jabba Lightspeed bundle, because I think these were all in it potentially, and maybe these ones weren't. So you are of course very close to Jabba. The only Lightspeed token will be Fennec, and that will come out, I believe, end of March. Let me check that actually. Yes, end of March. So you could potentially wait until then. That is a couple months away. So I think that is maybe a decision you might have to make, whether you save on the relic and get Jabba a bit later, or you try get Jabba a bit early. you'd essentially be missing out on a few runs of Smuggler's Run 2, which might not be the worst thing in the world, but I think that's a decision that would need to be made. Balin, all of them at gear 12, so we need to work on the relics. So I think it's still potentially a little bit off just because of the stars required and the relics. So I don't know if this would be priority number 1, just because there's a lot of other things that could be finished on the roster. I wanted to check Ahsoka mainly for checking the troopers. I don't think they're particularly close, although they do have Ahsoka Tano, so there's nothing really stopping them from going from Ahsoka, but I think they've just got so much other stuff to work on that it's probably not a priority. But yeah, gear 12 Peridia boys, which is good. Starkiller, so they are closer here to Starkiller than a few of the other options. Again, lots of gear 12s. I am still trying to like work through this and maybe come up with a video, but I do wonder if maybe a lot of Carbonite Lightspeed tokens were maybe used for some of these gear 12s, and just due to the number of gear 12s that you have, and you're probably past a lot of the Chirotech bottleneck because of that, it might be worth saving for the Erodium Lightspeed tokens, even though they take longer. It's just that by just applying more gear 12s, you're just creating more of a gear and relic bottleneck. But that's maybe just something more of a minor thing to think about. Jedi Knight Cal Kestis there in terms of requirements, all at 7 stars. So, and it would just be a case of Serjunda 2 relics for the mission, and of course Jedi Knight Cal Kestis himself. I might check on Jedi Knight Cal Kestis just to see how he's doing. Leia, how are we with Leia? So quite close actually to Leia. How are you compared to Jabba? You're closer to Jabba for sure. Scout Trooper, we have the Empire Lightspeed token, probably a very good use, and then after that 4 characters at relics. So I think a lot of the bottleneck, I don't know if it's a bottleneck, but a lot of the work that needs to be done is on these sort of gear 12 to gear 13 transitions, so that's probably going to be a big focus in terms of the farming plan. You said you're also close to gas, and I would agree with that. Trying to think about, so this is one of the uses I think that gear 12 tokens might be good for, is like these don't need to be at relics for the unlock. If you have 1 or 2 relics, I don't know if Magna Guard is not exactly a damage dealer, so maybe you might need also like Asajj at relics, but then you should be able to do gas. I just don't know if gas is the number 1 priority for me, just due to the amount of other stuff that you have on the horizon. He's good, decent character, just needs a lot of Zetas, and I always feel there's always another better team to put those Zetas on. SOKR, so interestingly you have, I presume, bought one of the bundles, but maybe the bundle without Veteran Smuggler Han Solo and not the Finalizer bundle, which is interesting. So I might check, that's another thing I'm going to check on, how's the Finalizer farm going, because that's, you said that's the reason that you're not going to farm it until the end of the year. So be interesting to see how far off you are that farm, because you have I think you have all of the pilots, you'll have all of the bounty hunter fleets from the Executor. So I wonder maybe it's the first order ships that just need worked on. Bo, very close as well. So you do have, I think you mentioned Bo-Katan in April, so probably have an eye on that Lightspeed token. So that's another thing I think to pencil in terms of the plan. So let's hop back on over to the account. So what other things did I want to check? So let's start with the Finalizer actually. Let's head back on over to ships and maybe let's filter for first order. Okay, so the holdup will probably be this ship. I don't believe TIE Dagger is needed. I think these 2 are needed. I don't think this is a difficult farm, if I'm not mistaken. Let me check that actually. Alright, so I just checked it, and actually it only looks like it appears in Guild Event, in the Guild Event store, which could make it a slightly slower farm. I could have sworn it was also in Galactic War and Fleet, but that might be just this ship. So yeah, I guess still a little bit of a delay. Definitely worth picking these up in the background, because if we include bounty hunter ships in this, you should have them all from farming Executor. I guess Xanadu Blood, that's another requirement, so that's another one to farm in the background, and you should have the rest. I think that's everything. Yeah, I think it is. So yeah, good sort of background farms, because you are relatively close to Supreme Leader Kylo Ren. Yes, you're very close. So 1 relic and the ship doesn't take long to farm once you meet the requirement, so something to think about for farming in the background. Other things I wanted to check was Reva, so let's head on over to Inquisitorius. Not in ships, there's no, well, I guess there is Inquisitor ships. So we already have Grand Inquisitor, so I presume through the Lightspeed bundle you'll be able to get the Zetas for these two through the Lightspeed tokens, so don't apply these of course, and we'll have to check through the guild actually. Let's do that now. How are they doing as a whole in terms of Reva? Alright, so it looks like they've got a lot. So I don't know when you join this guild, I guess we can check that, but it looks like there's a lot of Reva unlocks, so I would guess they're doing pretty well in the Reva mission. If we head on over to raid history, okay, so you haven't actually been in this guild for that long, so I guess maybe ignore what I just said. Let's, I don't know, guess that they're getting about 30 shards a time. You might still be a little bit off getting Reva, so yeah, let's maybe not focus on Reva. Other things to think about though: Jedi Knight Cal Castus, you've got the requirements. Do you have him just unlocked? You do. Okay, right, so it looks like that's another thing that could be done relatively soon, which is good. I wonder if this is a guild requirement. Also, while we're in Jedi, Master Qui-Gon and Padawan Obi-Wan are soon. We already looked at Balin and the Night Troopers and also Great Mothers. None of them were particularly close because they're all at gear 12, so still a bit of relic. So these are maybe obviously a little bit further back in priority. I would definitely go for the Duel of the Fates boys first, and then in terms of other assault battles, I think it was really just the ones that you could do with Imperial Troopers. So let's get rid of Jedi. Alright, so yeah, looks like the Imperial Trooper Lightspeed bundles weren't purchased, which is fine. So yeah, I'd maybe hold off on those. You're working on Jabba, so you should be able to get that one up and running. For the other one, I'm sure, I don't know, I don't even know if Inquisitors can do it. Maybe now with Relic Delta, but for the other one, I think you're at challenge tier 2 anyway. Yeah, you are, so I wouldn't worry about these two. You'll unlock Jabba soon enough, and then you'll be able to do challenge tier 3. Great Mothers will be able to do this, but maybe not straight away for Great Mothers. I would prioritize this one and then potentially these two for assault battles. Yes, so one other thing I wanted to check was, I like how they have this category, is error units. So 3 stars, so looks like you haven't been purchasing the episode pass, which is completely fine. I just wanted to know that in case you had the Kyber Lightspeed tokens, but that won't be the case. Again, like with the reveal that there are Kyber Lightspeed tokens potentially in all of them, I guess we don't know that for sure, but just makes the episode pass even more valuable, because you'll not only be getting those, you'll also be getting the journey guide character unlocked to begin with, and better performance in Colosseum just at having these at 4 stars, and also you get more era level up currency. So, and that's on top of everything else that's in that pass. So good value, but of course no need or pressure to purchase that. I think we just want to have another check through the roster. So yeah, the GLs are the absolute priority. I guess I rarely look at modding, but we can have a quick check. Looks like we're in the right direction. Protection primaries, protection, speed. Yep, that might be the extent of my modding check, because I can do it. It's maybe not the thing I find most interesting in this game. Head back. I guess, are you also working on Jedi Master Kenobi? Work in progress. He is only Relic 2, so obviously not big a deal. You already have Commander Ahsoka relics, if we can find her. Commander, yes, you have 1 Zeta on her. So I think a lot of the relics and Zetas now should really just go to finishing those relic teams. They're of course, they don't have like resource events with them, but they are GLs, and you're past the gear 13 bottleneck for these two, which I see as being a bit of a potential bottleneck just due to the number of gear 12s that you have currently. So may as well get those teams up and running and apply the Zetas. I think you could leave 1 off Jedi Master Luke, get a couple more in Cat, and I think 1 more Jedi Master Kenobi. And also you have Jedi Knight Cal Kestis unlocked, so he would be a great thing just to get up and running as well. And also they will help in terms of conquest. Always good to have GLs for conquest, just for a good bit of power. And Jedi Master Kenobi with his anti-turn meter should be particularly good in conquest, so definitely worthwhile getting those up and running, because it doesn't look like you have any. There are no conquest characters unlocked, so another good reason to focus on those. Other things, again, we've already gone through it. You briefly mentioned Relic Delta. I think you're still at the point in the game where you're wanting to build out and get things like assault battles, Jabba unlocked before you start worrying too much about Relic Delta. But when you do unlock Jabba, things like taking Chrysanthemum up to at least Relic 7, probably even higher, would help. Maybe obviously working on things like Grand Inquisitor a bit more once you unlock Reva. Yeah, so, and in terms of like GAC focus, like things like Treya would help, but I think what would help more now is things like these GLs, Leia. I think you're at the point of getting those, and maybe fitting in things like Great Mothers in between would help as well. So is there anything else I need to check? No, I think that's everything. So I'm now going to quickly make up a wee farming plan, so I'll jump to that now. Okay, so here with a quick plan. So in terms of the fixed dates that I like to work from, so of course we have Bo-Katan in April through the Lightspeed token, definitely worthwhile working towards that. And then I put Jabba in March because of the Fennec Lightspeed token. It is of course up to you whether, because you could in theory get Jabba early February if you really focused on those relics, but that would mean relicking up Fennec and you wouldn't get that benefit of that Lightspeed token. And I'm not sure if it's quite worth just the month and a half of Smuggler's Run events. So that would be roughly three runs of Smuggler's Run 2 that you'll miss out. I don't know if that's quite worth an entire relic character, but I think, yeah, completely your call on that. That's just why I put Jabba in March. I guess no surprise for the first two, it would just be a case of finishing the 2 Galactic Legends that you have. I think this would really help in terms of conquest. If you're not already getting the boxes that get you the conquest character each time, I think that would be pretty good. And also in case you haven't completed every Proving Grounds event, which you might not have because you don't have any GLs yet, I'm sure, I think JMK and Jedi Master Luke with Relic Delta now should help with that. And of course you have Commander Ahsoka Tano relic, so I think these would be very worthwhile doing straight away. You also mentioned Jedi Knight Cal Kestis and Duel of the Fates Assault Battle. I think these would be nice farms to work on while you're waiting on Jabba in March because of that lightspeed token. You are very close to Jewel of the Fates. You just need, and when I say to Jewel of the Fates, I mean to Relic 5+. You just need a relic on Master Qui-Gon, and same for Calcassus. You actually just need to relic up these two. You already have him unlocked, so yeah, and that will help both in terms of the guild and getting Zepho, but also he will go straight into your Jedi Master Luke team, who you just have up and running. So I think these would be nice things to work on while you're waiting on March. Then I guess it's yeah, it could go either way. Then you could even go straight into Leia if you wanted to. You were not too far away, quite a few relics that were needed, but I think if you wanted a quick break between all of the GLs that you're unlocking at once, I think focusing on the Great Mothers who are at gear 12 would be a good idea, and also unlocking Bo-Katan around that time. Then we'll be moving on to Leia, finishing off on top of all of the lightspeed tokens that you unlock, and yeah, getting another really strong GL on the team. Not really a great resource event, but you're relatively close, so may as well. Then I guess I could have equally have put Starkiller here. Then after that, I would maybe then focus back on some of the GAC teams that you mentioned. I just think that these teams have more value overall. They're good in GAC, but they also have other events and game modes that they're good in. Then maybe focus on Starkiller and Balin, who are a bit more GAC specialists, and by that point you should have a nice depth to your roster. And then, as I mentioned in the background, finish those ships for Starkiller, and you should be quite close to unlocking him. And then also another thing to look out for would be conquest characters. Again, I don't know if you've started unlocking them through Proving Grounds. If you have, you might be at the point in the not too distant future of unlocking those characters, so just make sure you're prepared for them. You have Omicron saved up for things like Bane for Malicos, because you already have Serjinda, and a lot of other teams like Ezra as well, things like that. So yeah, you've got a lot to work on. You're very close to a lot of things, as you mentioned, so should be quite a fun time in the account. And thank you very much for letting me review, and I'll see you next time.